This is the $6 Million Man board game from Parker Brothers. Now, this was produced in 1975 as a licensed tie-in to the hit television series of the same name that starred Lee Majors and ran from 1973 to 1978. The $6 Million Man was the story of Steve Austin, better known as the Bionic Man, which he became after suffering a catastrophic accident as a NASA test pilot at the beginning of the series. He was rebuilt at the cost of $6 million using miracle cybernetic body parts, including legs that could run up to 60 miles an hour, super strong arms, and a bionic eye that could see in infrared and magnify. In this game, players will play the role of one of 4 bionic men, but only one is the true Steve Austin. To determine who's the pretender and who's the real Steve Austin, they will take part in 4 unique missions located on the 4 corners of this game board. The first player to complete their missions proves that they're the real $6 Million Man. Now let's have a look at this game, starting with the game box itself. Right away, we see Steve Austin staring at you and that little yellow dot symbolizing his bionic eye. It's very bold and eye-catching, especially with the red letter titling. And I like that they highlight with those little comic book cells, the little comic book cells from the board that are featured at the center of each mission and provide the little bit of story context that this game has. When we flip it over, we see a large black and white photo of the game board itself and a description of what the gameplay is like, or at least what the story is about in this regard. It's kind of fluff, but realistically speaking, this is a TV tie-in game. It's not like they're going to say this is a spin and move game, which we'll get to in a moment. This is a lift-off top box, and inside it comes with a really nice cardboard organizer. The game revolves around this computer spinner here, which actually sits in its own cardboard box with a small recess here for you to place the included power cards in for gameplay. Now this all stows neatly to one side of the box. The player pieces will also have their own spot for storage, and you'll notice this cardboard insert that has the rules printed directly on it. So the rules are not in any kind of paper foldout or booklet, they're actually part of the box. And if you've watched my show at all, you know this pleases the couch. I always love having rules printed either on the underside of the lid of the box or on one of the inserts because it ensures that they'll always stand the test of time. Now let's take a look at the game itself, starting with this beautiful game board here. Now, this is very eye-catching and brightly colored. I like that for each mission, there's a little comic book style art cell with a description of the mission. There are 4 missions total in the game, taking up each quadrant of the board. And then in the center here, we see this little cell art. This is for the Bionic Research Lab, and kind of an odd piece of art because it's actually the light from the surgery room in the intro of the show when they're working on it. Kind of odd there, but either way, it's an end goal. The light to your surgery room where you were turned into a cyborg. Whatever. But this board serves its purpose. It's obviously a licensed game, so as you see, once we get into the gameplay, things are going to get a little janky. You have 4 player pieces to choose from. These are relatively flimsy. They're actually just fold-over cardstock, printed in a primary color, and it sits in one of these little plastic standees. They've obviously survived, but they've seen some wear just from regular gameplay, and obviously the previous owners handled this pretty gently because I could imagine a lot of sets out there are quite a bit worse. Now, this little guy here and these cards are the real lifeblood of the game. This is called the computer spinner. So players, rather than rolling dice, are going to be using the computer spinner to determine how far forward their Bionic Man can move along the track. And these are power cards. So they have a picture of the $6 Million Man on one side and a little power symbol on the other. And these are what players are going to use to keep track of their power levels as the Bionic Man. And should they lose all of their power cards, they'll need to start the mission over. Now, let's talk about gameplay. So players will be trying to complete all 4 missions on all 4 quadrants of the board, eventually ending up in the center at the Bionic Lab. The first player to reach the center of the board wins the game, proving that they are the real Steve Austin. Since this is played mission by mission, all 4 players will start in the same place and spin the computer spinner to move forward. Each turn, players will have the choice of spinning the computer spinner or drawing 2 power cards. They will start with a base balance of 3 power cards, but they will need to be careful to budget their power expenditures as they make their way around the board, because if they end up with a balance of 0, they need to restart the mission. Now, things that can cost you power would be like landing on the same space as another player, which initiates a bionic fight. Each player spins the computer spinner, and whoever has the highest number advances 1 space further ahead, and the player who lost has to pay the winning player 1 power card. There are also hazard spaces that they can land on where players will lose a turn or lose power cards. And if they finish a mission, they have to satisfy a certain requirement, usually spinning a certain total or higher to move on to the next mission. And should they fail that challenge, they will also need to pay a power card. The thing is there's almost no decision making in this game. I mean, you're a slave to your power levels, so you either lost too much power to move forward, or you got unlucky with a spin and landed on a space that's going to cost you the last of your power. There's very little executive function for players in this game. That being said, this is also kind of one of those silly nostalgia trips that's fun to break out if you're looking more for a social experience than actual gameplay depth. And I think it's kind of a funny tell that Parker Brothers actually printed on the side the age this game is intended for is ages 7 to 14. So they actually put an upper limit on this. I think they were very much aware that if a teenager bought this game expecting it to be even remotely as exciting as Monopoly, they'd be very disappointed. So this is 100% a cash grab based on the license, because I mean, all you're doing is spinning and moving. You can't choose whether you land on another player. You can't choose if you land on a hazard or in a place that jumps you ahead. You might beat everybody to the end of this mission, and for instance, the requirement here is spin 5 or more to move on to the next assignment. Well, the range of this is only up to 6, so you have a 30% chance. Now that sounds good, but I mean, you can still sit there for a long time while somebody else completes the mission and moves on after you had an enormous lead. So it can happen, and it can be very frustrating when it does. That's just the nature of games that rely entirely on chance. But like I said, you shouldn't be sweating too hard when you're playing a game like this. This is really more for the nostalgia trip. You're playing this to appreciate the art, to appreciate the license, and also to appreciate the company. I like a lot of simple board games, particularly if they're conversation pieces like this, simply for their impact on the social environment. It can be a lot of fun to have a few cocktails with your friends and play something that doesn't require a whole lot of strategy, and everybody gets to have a good laugh, because nobody takes a win or a loss too seriously. So this is far from the only licensed game out there, and I know many of them are kind of the same ilk. Very simple gameplay, more so just to print that intellectual property onto a game board and cash in. Do you have a favorite guilty pleasure licensed board game? Why don't you comment below and let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.